Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Bast of the Motor Safety Association. I'd like to welcome everyone to this morning's webinar on Escort vehicle usage for agricultural dealerships. This is actually our 17th webinar that we've worked with in conjunction with the Western Equipment Dealers Association. We've uploaded all of our past webinars onto our website, and some dealerships have used them for lunchroom information sessions. So during the lunchtime, they would put on the webinar, and they would have the staff at their dealership watch it. So people have been using these webinars post-webinar and using them for display purposes to share the information with their staff. You may have noticed that I've muted all of the microphones except myself, and I've done that just to keep background noise very limited. And but I do provide, there's a chat box, so if you do have any questions throughout the course of the webinar, I encourage you to type them into the chat box, and at the end of the webinar I will look at that chat box and go through and hopefully answer those questions to the best of my ability. So on the agenda for today's topic is we'll go through a brief introduction to Escort vehicle usage and the importance of it. I'm going to dabble a little bit on where you can find legislation when it comes to the rules involved with Escort vehicle usage for agricultural dealerships, touch on some generic rules and responsibilities, talk about signage requirements, and go through some frequently asked questions. And I found it quite interesting. As I prepared for this webinar, I have to admit I wasn't a professional when it came to this topic, but as I've done some research and done some preparation, whenever I've gone on my travels down the roadways, I've been now keeping an eye on a lot of the dealerships as I've seen the Escort vehicles in use or not in use, if they're using flags or signage. So it's been quite an eye-opener for myself throughout this process to learn a little bit more about the Escort vehicle usage and what you folks are up to when it comes to this task. So a little bit about us at the Motor Safety Association. For those of you who aren't aware of us, I know there's some new attendees to the webinar, and with the recent amalgamation from QUIDA to WIDA, we have some different attendees. So I'll just briefly touch on a little bit about us. We are a non-profit, non-government safety association in the province of Saskatchewan. We look after the health and safety services of any business that sells or services anything with a motor or steering wheel. We'd be a non-government, non-profit, non-enforcement association. So we do offer things such as this webinar we're doing today. We go on site upon request and do shop inspections and noise level testings. We offer industrial ergonomic assessments, and we work with safety certification, whether it be through a core audit or to go and give businesses a sense of where they are with their safety management system. We do have a website, and we're on Twitter. So that's a little bit about us. We are also governed by a board of directors, and we do have representation right from the agricultural dealerships in Saskatchewan. So we do answer to a group of industry members such as yourself. So as we roll through into this introduction, as a pilot vehicle or escort vehicle operators, you're part of a team moving over dimensional loads, whether you're driving the front escort vehicle or if there's a rear escort vehicle or if you're pulling that over dimensional load. You have responsibilities to be safe on the roadways, the public around you, for yourself and your own safety and the item you're transporting. There are some duties required. It's not just as simple as hanging a wide load sign and turning on strobe lights. And we'll go through this webinar and give you some information as to how we can help you prepare for doing this duty at the best of your abilities. So a bit of an introduction or history of how this process came to be. About 6 years ago, Alberta and Saskatchewan reached a memorandum of understanding. Their goal was to harmonize some of these policies and regulations for the commercial operations of escort vehicles, because each province, the rules were so greatly different in the legislation. So about 6 years ago, they started to work together on that harmonization. And then in April of 2010, BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan launched a New West partnership to benefit changes within these regulations for the implementation when it comes to escort vehicle usage. During this journey, CUIDA at that time, now known as Western Equipment Dealers Association, was very instrumental on your behalf to have escort vehicle restrictions and legislation similar amongst the provinces. So they had worked very hard to do what they can to make the harmonization for you folks the best that they could be. And I believe one of the main reasons that they were involved with the importance of this, and when we look at these numbers, the incidents involving farm equipment on roads in Western Canada, as you can see, these numbers have been drastically climbing. The total of incidents, the injuries, the deaths, the amount that are happening at night. You can see that in 2011 the results kind of reached a peak, which was alarmingly high. And I believe what came out of this results was there was a lot more awareness. And after the events of 2011 and the high number of incidents, a group came to be formed known as the Western Canada Pilot Car Association. And I want to take some time on this slide because this is a very important slide for you folks to be aware of. The Western Canada Pilot Car Association is a primary goal is to improve driver safety through increased public awareness, industry training, and legislative initiatives. So this group started in March of 2012, slightly after we'd seen that large influx of incidents that happened on the roadways. So this is a group or association that represents your industry. So I definitely encourage you to write down their email address, their phone number. I follow them on Facebook myself, and I keep this information close to me because these people are experts in their field, and if you wish to contact them for more information down the road, they're a great resource for the attendees today of this webinar. And I know if I'm ever stuck and I have some questions that are out of my expertise, I'm going to be contacting this association. So I just want you to be aware that there is a group representing you specifically for the topic of today's webinar. Previously to this webinar rolling out, I had a few calls and emails wondering, what am I going to touch on the legislation in today's webinar, and how would I do so with the 4 prairie provinces? And when I looked at that process, when each province has similar legislation, but there's still a lot of differences. I know the folks at CUIDA, when they went through the process of trying to harmonize the legislation, there's still some differences amongst the prairie provinces. So we came across a website, which again I want you to be aware of because this is very important, www.uspilotcars.com. And this website, there's 3 drop-down boxes. The first one being pilot car phone list. So you would select your province or state, and you can. There's companies on there that they are licensed escort vehicle operators. So you can source people if you're looking for them. But where it gets into great value to yourself is the second tab, U.S. and Canada guidelines. And this is so essential for you to have access to this website because you would click on your province or state and it gives you all of the current legislation because, as I mentioned before, unfortunately, there's still some differences from each state to provinces, such things as how many flags are used, the time of day, the widths, if it's a 2-lane or 4-lane highway. So as much as we try to have some harmonization, the legislation still differs. So I did do just a quick screenshot of what the legislation looks like. And I did pull this up for Saskatchewan. And actually, this is only one of the screens for the legislation. I would have had 5 of these per province. So it would have been quite a cumbersome presentation to go through all of the details per each province. So I just wanted to take the time up front to explain again the importance of the website uspilotcars.com to seek that that legislation that is applicable for your province or jurisdiction. And again, you may have other sources that you can utilize, but I just found this one very handy to research that legislation for each of the provinces. So I encourage you to make a note of that if you are looking for more legislational requirements. Another cool thing that came out on that website, on the home screen, there was something called WCS Permits. And this is an app that you can use. It's a free download app that allows you access to get North American permits. So you can put in your state or province, and you can utilize that app if you chose to do so when looking for permits. So as I mentioned before, some of the legislation is going to be different amongst provinces, but there are some general underlying rules that I think is a very common ground that people can take out of this webinar. And I'll go through some of those rules to give you some basic safety information, which I hope helps at your dealership. One of the first rules being always obtaining a permit and getting that permit in place and having that ready to go when you are using Escort vehicles. Ensure the Escort vehicles maintain a safe distance from the overdimensional load. Some legislation or best practices indicate 300 to 1,000 meters is what the distance is for the Escort vehicles to be from the overdimensional load. And for the Escort vehicles and overdimensional load drivers to have constant communication with each other, whether it be via two-way radios. And this one I did some research on it because in Saskatchewan there was some recent information to changes in our legislation with distracted driving and not being able to use cell phones or mobile devices. However, for the application of operating an Escort vehicle on our roadways, the two-way radio communication is essential, and the distracted driving doesn't trump this legislation. So you do have to have that two-way communication in place. So that's something that you want to be aware of as well. And your overdimensional loads mustn't travel in a large convoy, so you can't be delivering 15 air drills, all one behind the other on the roadway, unless, of course, your permit indicated to do so. So your permit has to match what you're hauling. So you just can't get one permit and blanket it for many pieces of equipment. So you would get a permit for that specific trip, and no matter how many pieces of load are in it. So just to keep that in mind as a general rule. It's important to occasionally pull over to allow the buildup of following traffic to safely pass. And some of the legislation states if there's 3 or more public cars behind you on the roadway, to pull over at the next safest area. So that's an opportunity for the rear Escort vehicle. They can watch for that and they can communicate that we do have that buildup of vehicles and allow others to get past. It's also a good general rule to travel in the right-hand lane with the overhang extending over the shoulder. For example, if I'm pulling this self-propelled windrower trailer, as you can see, there's a slight overhang. So that would be trailering in the right-hand lane over the shoulder when that's being moved down the road. Some other general rules. This might seem quite clear and obvious, but it does go without mentioning that to turn all headlights on of Escort vehicles. Sometimes people oversee this because of the daytime running lights. But with the daytime running lights, your brake lights don't turn on or your rear lights. So you therefore have to engage your headlights to have your tail lights on. So that's a good rule for people to be aware of. And your dimensional signage should be properly displayed. And I'll have some details on that of how we can display that coming up in the webinar. So when we are sending people out to drive our Escort vehicles on the roadway, do we just send anybody out? Do we give them training? Or when we go to bring someone into our dealership, do we have a job description for this task? And this is a critical part of in a dealership if you are doing escort vehicle usage, because you just, as I mentioned, you don't want to send somebody out that doesn't have that experience. So this job description provides some ideas that might give you some insight if you are filling this position. For example, having the ability to sit in a vehicle for extended periods of time, being able to drive that escort vehicle safely under adverse road conditions. So road conditions may vary. Someone would have to complete a flag person certificate course, being able to communicate, hear and understand warnings. They may have to stand along the roadside flagging or directing traffic for extended periods, know how to read a tape measure so they can determine if the load size, and reading and understanding maps. Some of these things may seem clear or obvious tasks, but if people may have difficulty reading certain maps or certain tasks. So it is important right from the upfront when you are having someone in this task to ensure that this kind of gives you a description of the task that they are doing. And feel free to use this or modify it to make it work for your dealership. So some guidelines now. I'm going to speak to the front escort operator. So one of their primary roles are to warn oncoming traffic of the overdimensional load. And as I mentioned before, with my increased awareness that I've been learning about this topic, when I'm on the roadways, I'm watching, oh, I see a front escort, so I'm looking for that load coming up. And that's what our goal is, for the public to be aware of the front escort and that there is going to be a load coming behind it. As I mentioned before, that 300 to 1,000 meters ahead of the load and having the approved signs and flashing lights. The front escort driver also has to follow that route specified on the permit. So they are really leading this train. So they have to understand the route and be aware of it and follow it. If they take a wrong turn, the whole trip is going to be off by the time we try to find a safe spot to turn around if we're in an area we don't want to be. So the front escort does have a critical role in following the route on the permit. And two, they have to find a safe place to pull over to allow following traffic to safely pass. So once we have those buildup of perhaps 3 cars behind us, they would be able to say, okay, I see there's a large area that we can approach to move to let the following traffic pass safely. So those are some general guidelines for front escort operators. Rules are much similar to the guidelines are similar to the rear escort operators. So they're warning the rear approaching traffic of the overdimensional load. Because sometimes these pieces of equipment, they may have just a slow-moving vehicle sign emblem or smaller flashing lights, and someone coming at a fast speed down the highway, they may not have adequate time to stop or react. So by having that rear escort vehicle in place, and again, it's going to be determinant on the legislation in your province or jurisdiction if and when you require the rear escort. This is just giving you some general guidelines when it is required. So they too will travel 300 to 1,000 meters behind the load with the approved signage and flashing lights. And they're going to notify the load driver and the front escort of the motorist's attempt to pass. Sometimes a motorist may try to get past this escort train and the overdimensional load to get past ahead of it. So the rear driver would communicate that. So we know that there's a motor vehicle trying to pass. Another important role of the rear escort operator is they're really your eyes and ears, because they're going to be looking for such things as flat tires, if there's objects coming loose from the load, if the lights are working. Perhaps they may notice a wheel wobbling and it's a predetermination that a wheel bearing is failing. So they are keeping an eye at the back of your overdimensional load, which is an important role that they would have as well. So some equipment that you want to have in your escort vehicles is you want to have a high visibility vest per each crew member. So make sure that those are in place. Have a flashlight that works with the signal tube, as well as various safety equipment, such as a first aid kit, fire extinguishers, and a hard hat. You want to ensure that your vehicle is safe and maintained and capable of displaying the required signage? So does it have an adequate mounting bracket for the signage or anchorage point to mount the signs? So we want to ensure that's in place. And do we have warning triangles and warning flags? Are they battery powered? Do they work? As well as the approved dimensional signage. And that's what I'm going to speak to now, the signage. And as again, there are some differences amongst the provinces, but for the most part, these signs are fairly standard, and a supplier or someone who issues, or you can purchase these signs from in your own province or jurisdiction, can also help you in determining what your signage requirements are. But generally, they're 2.45 meters in length and 0.3 meters high. So that would be the sign featured on the slide. The letter D is white and 20 centimeters high. So this sign too must be mounted on a rigid area of your equipment. You don't want to mount it like a Canada flag and have this thing flapping and it's just mounted on one side. It has to be firmly secured and mounted so it is rigid and visible. And you want to ensure too that perhaps you didn't make your own sign like this, because it has to have reflective and transparent properties, similar as to what you would see in a stop sign. There is alternate signage that you can use. So this is a little bit shorter in length. It's 1.5 meters, but still remains that same height of 0.3 meters high. And the letters are black on a yellow background. And again, these letters are 20 centimeters high, and these too should also be mounted on a rigid area of the equipment. So there are different times based on the equipment and the capabilities. So this is a shorter sign, and then there was the longer sign that was mentioned on the previous slide. This seems to be one of the most common signage that I see through my travels. This is usually mounted on top of one of the fleet vehicles at the dealership, and these work great. There's two positions: upright when it's in use, and you can fold it flat when it's not in use. So therefore, you can use this sort of signage or this sort of truck for more than one application. So maybe its main purpose is for being a front or rear escort vehicle as in part of your dealership, but you may use this for other tasks if you have to go on a service call. If you could fold that signage down, you can use this truck for more than one application. I always stress the importance of, before the trip begins, so we went through the process of, we know what we need for signage, we've got our permit, we're ready to go, we have the equipment in our vehicles, but before the trip begins, we want to take a look at that permit. We want to ensure it is accurate and that it follows the route and plans that we have for the trip. We want to conduct a pre-trip inspection of vehicles and contents. In the province of Saskatchewan, it is legislated that powered mobile equipment must be inspected pre-trip or pre-use, and this would be an example of a piece of powered mobile equipment, a front or rear escort vehicle. So you'd want to have a checklist that you checked and verified this powered mobile equipment pre-trip. And you want to check the vehicle contents. Do I have the items that I mentioned in the earlier slides, the first aid kit, the high-vis vest, the flags, and do they work? So this is a good opportunity in the pre-trip inspection to conduct this before the trip begins. And two, you want to ensure the route is communicated and understood, because, as I said before, the person who's driving the front escort vehicle will know the route, but that needs to be communicated so everyone knows where they're going and there's no surprises. Being in the prairie provinces, the weather can change very quickly. Actually, myself yesterday, I got caught in this. I traveled to southwestern Saskatchewan, and the temperature overnight, they had some freezing rain and snow, and the past few days from where I left from on the trip, we were in the mid-teens and very warm. We haven't seen snow for a while. So as I'm driving along, I come over the hill, and just like that, the road conditions changed. There's vehicles in the ditch and very treacherous road conditions. So that's how fast things can change amongst the same day within the same province. So just to keep that in mind, check the weather forecast before you get out, just to ensure that you can get through in the safest possible manner. So once we've done that and have that in place, so as we go out now during our trip, we're going to obey all traffic regulations. Don't assume you have the right of way or other drivers will yield to you because you may have flags or flashing lights. You too have to follow all of the regulations of the roadways. And you want to maintain the appropriate lead and follow distances. For example, when stopping at a controlled intersection, you still want to maintain that space separation. If the front Escort driver gets through the intersection, but the load does not, the front driver should pull over at a safe area and let the load catch up to the appropriate distance and then resume their travel. And this too applies for the rear Escort vehicle. So you want to maintain those distances and be aware of that when we are crossing intersections. It is going to take some time to get through and maintain those distances. Again, during that trip, we want to let public traffic safely pass. If we have that buildup of vehicles, we want to communicate that through our radio system to let people in the public to pass through safely. And we have to be aware of road conditions, as I mentioned, can change. Visibility could become limited, flat tires, wheel bearing problems, etc. So we need to find a safe place to park or remove our load from roadways if we were perhaps storm state, or if we have a major breakdown. If we can do so, we're going to want to get off of the roadways. And we want to be aware of the compromised sight distances. For example, down a winding or steep roadway, it might be hard to see that front Escort vehicle or that over-dimensional load. So we want to get that front Escort vehicle out in front of the load far enough so that we aren't having the issues of compromised sight distance, or for the rear vehicle, the same protocol, just so that people approaching from the rear are aware of it, because some roadways, as much as they say some provinces are flat as far as the eye can see, that's not always the case, and there are roadways and curves and hills that are compromising sight distances. So keep that in mind. So that may affect your spacing when you are driving the Escort vehicles as well. Flagging is another part of Escort vehicle operations, and there are certain situations that may arise when flagging is required to notify the public. For example, if there was some damage or breakdown, that we have to notify them that that they can't get through this area. So we do have hard hats, high-vis vests, and the signage with either the stop or slow. And the role of the flag person is to advise motorists that they do have to either stop or slow through this area. I do have a bit of a sample procedure that people can look at for perhaps standing far enough ahead of the problem area to give the approaching traffic enough distance or enough time to stop or slow down. We don't want to have our stop sign just 10 feet in front of the problem area. We want to get far enough ahead so that people have enough time to react. They can see us with our flag and our high vis so that they can make the necessary adjustments. And we want to face traffic by standing in the opposite lane to reduce our chances of being hit. We don't want to put ourselves right there where we're going to be hit. So we have to go through that procedure to ensure that we're looking after ourselves and our safety as well, which is of utmost importance. And to use clear signals, whether it be stop or slow. Make sure that when you are flagging, you have your sign appropriately displayed. If time permits, you could, if you have stopped some vehicles, you can inform them that you could say, we did have a flat wheat tire on this over-dimensional load, and we're unable to move. It's blocking up the highway. So we have a tire service repair team out right now, and they're conducting the repair. They're almost completed, so we won't be much longer. So just if time permits and it's safe to do so, you can communicate that to the people driving as motorists. And once it is safe to travel, use your hand to gesture traffic, don't wave your flag inward for people to come towards you. You can put up your flag or sign that says slow, and you can gesture with your hand to encourage the movement of traffic from the motorists. So there are some actually provincial flagsperson certified courses you can take. I pulled a screenshot. This one is out of Manitoba from the Heavy Construction Association. They offer a training course on flagperson requirements to have a certified flagperson. I did some checking in Saskatchewan as well, and a similar course to this one takes about 3.5 hours and costed approximately $100. So again, too, you want to check with your province or jurisdiction, but this just gives you an idea that there are some resources out there that can give you certified flagperson training. In the emergency response aspect, in the event of a collision, in the situations where we have to seek outside help, for example, to call 911 in case of an emergency, and we're not going to move that injured person unless they're in immediate danger, then we would do so. But for the most part, we want to ensure that we've notified emergency response, whether it be calling for police, ambulance, fire, or towing. So you want to understand that and have that information available to get help first. If it's safe to do so, to avoid a second collision, to exit the roadway. So just be sure that the police have cleared the scene before you just decide to exit the roadway. So and again, this is the importance of the flag person getting out there and directing and slowing or stopping traffic in the event of an emergency. And if you can't exit the roadway, turn off the ignition of the wrecked vehicle and have your flashers on. So again, the police, fire, they're very good at directing traffic, and they can very much assist and control a scene in the event of an emergency. So once the trip is completed, we've delivered our overdimensional piece of equipment. We came back to the dealership. We're not just going to put everything away. We want to just take a quick check and restock any of the supplies we used. So if I was directing traffic and I had my flashlight and I used it for quite a while, I may have to restock the batteries or whatever equipment I used in this application. So just to be aware, restock any items that you use once your trip is completed. We can remove the overdimensional load signage, and as we put it away, we just want to make sure it's clean. If we damaged it, is it ripped or torn? And this gives us adequate time to source replacement signage before our next trip, so that the next person who goes out on a trip opens it up and the sign is ripped or tore. So this gives us time, once the trip is completed, to inspect it, make sure it's good, and it's ready for next time. And probably one of the most important aspects is communication. Talk to the other Escort vehicle operator, the driver of the overdimensional load. What went good with this trip? What are some areas we can do better on next time? Were there any concerns? So just a brief discussion, and this will help improve your process at your dealership when you are moving those loads. I do have some frequently asked questions, and these are some questions that sometimes do come up amongst different industries or different people when they are looking for information amongst Escort vehicles. And I did pull the Saskatchewan legislation to answer this, but I mentioned before some of these rules do overlap from province to jurisdiction, and I encourage you to pull some of the legislation as well for your own province. However, when farm equipment is being towed or self-propelled and protrudes into oncoming lanes, whether it be 2-lane or 4-lane, you need to have a permit. At night, between sunset and sunrise, or when your load exceeds 8.6 feet wide. There's certain situations when you're traveling with an overdimensional load when you do not need a permit. Perhaps one of those being when farm equipment is being moved on municipal roads or gravel roads, non-highways. So that would be an example of when a permit is not required. When can't I haul loaded over-dimensional farm equipment? And again, every province is going to have a little bit different times or dates, but I want to put this in here because sometimes people may overlook that. They look at the dimensions and the requirements, but they sometimes aren't aware of the time aspect. So for example, after 3 o'clock on Fridays, May through September, after noon on Sundays and public holidays, and after 3 p.m. on the day prior to a public holiday. So those give some ideas when you can't haul loaded over-dimensional farm equipment. So again, those are some frequently asked questions, and I felt this was important because sometimes, as I said, people look at the times of day, or I would say they look at the requirements for widths, but they may not focus on those times of day for their province. As we get close to concluding, I want to give you this information. I did some research for each of the provinces. As I mentioned before, I couldn't give everyone their legislation through this webinar just because of the vast differences as well as the length of time it would have added. So we do have, as I mentioned before, the link to the website that gives you that legislation, but I do have a contact number for each of your provinces that could help you. So if you do have specific questions or specific concerns, if you're in one of these provinces that you need help with, you call this phone number. They will be able to give you some answers as well to into this topic. It sheds some light if you do have some questions. I also, again, provided the phone number for the Western Canadian Pilot Car Association, and I did have the opportunity to speak with them before this webinar, and they are a great resource for you, and I encourage you to, as I mentioned before, I had their email address as well as their phone number to utilize these folks in certain applications where you are looking for their resources that they can help you with. That concludes our topic today on Escort vehicle usage for agricultural dealerships, but there's a couple things I really want to touch on before we sign off. We are providing certificate templates. So after today's webinar, I will you'll receive an email that has a certificate template. So feel free to put in the name of the person who attended the webinar. I did have a call from a dealership saying, I've got about 3 or 4 people I'm going to grab in the office here and watch this webinar. That's great. So with that situation, you can issue a certificate template for all these peoples. We do like if people can sign in individually, just so we can track numbers. But where that's not a possibility, this works great as well. So we are acknowledging people by having that certificate template they can print. We also have a survey feedback that immediately will pop up on your screen after the webinar. This helps give us some guidance, areas that we can improve on, and gives us some direction about the webinars in the future that we can work at to give you the best possible product we can. Something we're quite excited about at the Motor Safety Association is we're going to be offering online courses in the future. So we're going to be, it'll be coming up quite soon. We're going to be offering our first course on defensive driving. So this will be something, no matter if you're in any of the provinces amongst WIDA, you can sign in and you can take a defensive driving training course. And there will be an exam with it, and this would be counting as training because it is coming from an approved training agency, and you will be proving competency by having an exam. So I encourage people to look into that in the future because we're quite excited about that. And as always, we are welcoming future topics for these webinars. Today's webinar topic came from a suggestion of an equipment dealership, and based on their suggestions, we can give you folks what you're looking for. As you can see, our next webinar we earmarked for July 15th. I did receive a call from a dealership here about a month ago saying, I need to find out more information about hantavirus protection. There's a little bit here and there, but those mice that are getting into pieces of equipment and ripping through it, we need to be able to protect our people at our dealership. So our next webinar is on July 15th. We'll talk about antivirus protection for agricultural dealerships. So that'll be coming up here in the summer. So with that, it concludes our webinar this morning. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to be with us this morning for this topic. And keep our phone number as well. As mentioned, I gave you the phone numbers of the people in different provinces that can assist you with Escort vehicle usage. But if you want to give us a call, you can bounce it off me, and I can look into some information for you as well in Saskatchewan. And we do have a website and our email address. So I encourage you to follow up with any questions you may have for us. With that, I see there were no questions that were entered in the chat box. I'd really like to thank you once again for taking the time this morning to sign into this webinar on Escort vehicle usage for agricultural dealerships, and I look forward to having you with us again on July 15th or hearing from you in the future if you have questions. Thank you.